Hey guys, okay, so the breaking news we're going to look at today is Belal Muhammad is out of UFC 310. We're going to have a look and see what exactly happened, give you my thoughts. Are we going to see Shavkat fight somebody? I want to see an interim title. Will we see it? Will we see Alex Pereira come and save the event again? Because the event, I wouldn't say it's that much in jeopardy, but it's nice to have two title fights. It was a banger of a card that they were going to put out at the end of the year, but now only one title fight, but let's see. And I'm going to give you guys an update on UFC 309, UFC 311. And as a bonus, I'm going to give you guys an update because it's about a week away from the US presidential elections. I'm going to give you an update on Dana White going and absolutely cooking Mark Cuban and to an extent Chris Cuomo. So let's have a look at the first bit of breaking news. So as you guys can see here, Belal Muhammad posted to his Instagram, caught a bone infection in my foot, had to put a PICC line in my arm for IV antibiotics for the next 6 weeks with no physical activity. Allah's plan is the best plan. I'm sorry to everyone that was coming to see me. I'll be back soon, inshallah. John Anik, love your champ. Allah makes you stronger than before, bro. I love these types of Instagram comments. But yeah, he's posted some pictures. He even posted himself in operating room, getting his IV line in. This is post. No word yet how the bone infection happened. I don't exactly know how these kinds of things happen, but yeah, so the news is that he's out. So as you guys recall, Belal Muhammad and Shavkat were supposed to fight at UFC 310. I said it was a banger of a card. I mean, championship bout at welterweight, championship bout at flyweight, as a heavyweight bout, Sorgan and Volkov. Sorgan's a favorite for that one, actually. Interesting. Luque and Nick Diaz, fan favorite fight. Hopefully Diaz doesn't pull up like the last time he pulled up. Evloev and Sterling, that was the rescheduled one. And then we've got a couple of other fights down. I mean, Chiesa, Guida versus Chase Hooper. Yeah, banger of a card. Still a good card, I think, even without Belal and Shavkat. Like, I think Belal would have been a good fight for Shavkat had that fight happened. I think a wrestler is a good wrestling base is a good base to have against a guy like Shavkat. I still think Shavkat would have won that fight. I think Shavkat beats pretty much everybody at welterweight. But the question now becomes, what happens to the main event? Okay, I'm going to cover a couple of options of who could take the place of Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov at UFC 310. The first case I'd like to make is for Ian Machado Garry. Now, you can say what you want about Ian Machado Garry. Some things are quite questionable. Some things are a little bit weird, cringe, whatever you want to say. But you cannot deny that the man has performed. If you look at his record, I mean, he's 15-0 overall. He's 8-0 in the UFC. Here 8-0, I believe. Yes, 8-0. He's had some good wins. He's had some entertaining wins. And he's had some boring results. I mean, particularly the Jeff Neal one. That one was for me, was a little bit weird. But you cannot win all your fights in an entertaining fashion unless you're prime Anderson Silva. So, and even he had some boring fights where people didn't want to engage him. So 8-0, 15-0 overall. Shavkat Rakhmonov is 18-0. That's what Ian Garry actually says in his post. So he said, yeah, this was actually only 15 hours ago, straight after my win against MVP. So he's been calling for this fight for quite a while. I think it's a great call out for him, because if you look at the rankings, he's ranked number 7. Okay, so Leon Edwards just lost to Belal. He's out. Kamaru Usman, who we'll get to in a second, he's a good shot. Okay, then you've got Shavkat, who jumped Kamaru Usman for that shot. Jack Della, probably more deserving than him as well, but you know, I think he's fighting at UFC 312 most probably. They'll keep him for that, so maybe a title fight there. Sean Brady, probably more deserving. Colby Covington isn't gonna be. I think he needs another win before anything happens for him. So if you're in Machado Garry, I think it's a smart call out. It's a no-lose fight. So for him, you know, it's short notice. If he loses to Shavkat, people commend him for taking this fight on short notice. If he wins, he becomes the interim champion. He sets himself up with Belal Muhammad for a title shot further down the line. So I think it's a smart call out by him, and I would like to actually see this fight. Someone's O has got to go. Now, Kamaru Usman, who I'd like to get to next, just posted this. So people are starting to speculate, obviously that's in relation to, or that is in relation to Belal Muhammad's injury. And I would like for him to put his name in the hat. If you go to his record, obviously, I mean, he hasn't fought since October last year. That was a short notice fight against Khamzat Chimaev, which a lot of people thought if that had went 5 rounds, he would have won. He would have taken Khamzat Chimaev's debatable maybe. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, but he is the long-time champion. So I could see this fight even being made, especially because it's short notice. The weight might be an issue because I think Kamaru Usman is pretty damn heavy. He was always quite a big welterweight. So this is interesting. This could happen. Would I like to see it? Of course, I would like to see it. I think he also has a style that could beat Shavkat, much like Belal. I think he's probably better at that style than Belal is. But, we don't know where Kamaru Usman's at. I mean, he's still in the rankings. As we mentioned, he's second in the rankings, but he hasn't fought in over a year. And no one seems to know what the plan is. Are they going to put him in middleweight again? Are they going to keep him at welterweight? It seems like they're going to keep him at welterweight here, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, Khamzat was at welterweight for the longest time and stopped fighting at welterweight. And now here he is in the middleweight ranking. However, there is another option. Now, MMA News is reporting that Alex Pereira has been approached to save the day again, as if he hasn't saved enough days. But they're saying here that the UFC has reportedly turned to familiar face in Alex Pereira after losing its headline attraction for the final pay-per-view event of the year. Basically, they just say that, Belal's out, which we've covered already. And then again, they need to secure a headline matchup to close out the 2024 season. Pereira has been approached. Okay, so they're talking about Pereira having saved the day before. So they're talking about his previous events. And the bit I want to get to over here is, while that still may be the case, MMA Mania is reporting that Poatan has indeed been contacted about headlining UFC 310 against Muhammad Ankalaev in light of Muhammad versus Rakhmonov being off. Now, will that happen? We don't know. I think Alex Pereira will be game to do something like that. Can Ankalaev fight in America specifically? But, can he fight outside of Abu Dhabi? I actually don't know. I don't think so. But they are looking, seemingly the UFC is looking to find a replacement fight as quickly as possible. And I think out of those 3 options, to be honest with you, I would like to keep the welterweight theme. I'm not too worried about who takes over this spot between Belal Muhammad's spot between Ian Machado Garry or Kamaru Usman. You might give it to Kamaru Usman because he is a former champion. But that just depends what the UFC wants to do with Kamaru Usman. Do they want to build a new star or consolidate a new star in Ian Machado Garry? We'll have to see. But I think, it is still a good card regardless of this, with all the other fights that are happening. But I do want to see 2 title fights. I think you end the year off right. You have a massive, massive card, and you make an interim title fight for them to then fight one another when Belal Muhammad is back. Now, the next little bit of news. Of course, everybody knows UFC 309 is taking place in little under 2 weeks, so little under 3 weeks, excuse me, November the 17th. And it's headlined, and this is also another banging card. The UFC's done a great job of putting together 2 good cards to end the year. John Jones and Stipe Miocic. John Jones is a heavy favorite. Look at that. I mean, rightly so. But it's just not. It's unexpand that. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler should be a banger either way. Aroha versus Silva is a good fight. Bareknuckle, Paul Craig. That's a lot of. I mean, again, Bareknuckle's a minus 1,000, but if Paul Craig can do what he's been doing from the bottom, he's super dangerous from the bottom. If he can get it done, that's an interesting fight. It's still weird to me that Chris Weidman is fighting on the main card, but, it is what it is. Banger of a card. Johnny Bones Jones just posted an update, 240 pounds, fast and strong. I used to walk around 235 as a light heavyweight. Almost feels like a light heavyweight fight without the cut. Now, a lot was made about his weight gain in the last fight because he was, 240 pounds in the octagon, but he looked a little bit overweight. And essentially, what a lot of people said is that he didn't need to put on that additional weight. But, you know, whatever the reason may be, what's he bench pressing here? It's 20, 20, 10, 5. So he's doing about what 130 kilogram bench press. So pretty much just over his actual body weight, which is not too bad. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see John Jones back. I'm a huge John Jones fan. I would like to see him fight Aspinall, which he might do after this. You know, knowing him, he is a savage. He is a champion. He is about legacy. You know, we might get to see that fight. But the Stipe fight, I think, you know, if you had to look back at it 10 years from now, it is still a legacy fight. No one is going to be like, oh, but Stipe was old. So I still am really, really looking forward to this card, UFC 309. We're going to be doing a live stream, by the way, so if you guys do want to catch that, it's going to be on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, X. So make sure to check that if you missed the last one. Check this one out. So the next little bit of news I want to get to is by MMA Fighting. I've looked on, I mean, if I go to the UFC events list, I don't see anything on UFC 311 just yet. They've obviously got UFC 312, UFC 310, which they haven't even updated yet, so it's probably still coming. But MMA Fighting is reporting that unbeaten prospect Peyton Talbot is going to fight Rayoni Barcelos at UFC 311. Now, obviously, Peyton Talbot, they highlighted here as well, stoppage win against Cameron Simon. That one hurt, I won't lie. As a South African, as a fan of Cameron Simon, that one did hurt, but take nothing away from Peyton Talbot. It was such an impressive performance. A lot of people are pipping him to be a champion, a future champion, and I do kind of agree because he's very similar in his style and his come up to what Sean O'Malley was, but he, for me, probably a little bit better in this in his come up. So that's been added to UFC 311 reportedly. And they're saying so far 4 Brazilian talents: Jayden Almeida, battling Sergey Spivak, Johnny Walker versus Guzkov, Carol Rosa, and taking on Elaine Perez at bantamweight. This is going to be a banger, I think. A bit of a step up in competition for Peyton Talbot, who's been flying through people so far. Really, really a good future prospect, and he'll look to continue his rise. But this is a bit of breaking news, so yeah, I'm sure the UFC will announce that shortly. So just an update, this is on TalkSport. They've summarized this whole thing really nicely because this has been sort of it started on an interview that Derek Lewis did recently, and then it's gone through the Ariel Helwani show, X, and everything. But TalkSport, I'll link it in the description. The UK edition has done a really good job because they've kind of summarized everything nicely over here in one article. Who's this written by? So yeah, they've basically gone and summarized it nicely. I'm going to just read in the important bits. Essentially, as you guys can see over here, if you're unfamiliar, Derek Lewis calling Daniel Cormier a scumbag and a piece of shit. Now, those words get thrown around a lot lately. And, you know, for someone to really be called a scumbag or a piece of shit, like, you have to really do some bad things. But essentially, I mean, if you haven't watched the interview, go watch the interview. The two have 40 before and everything, but yeah, Derek Lewis here, one thing doesn't sit right with me. Do people really like DC? You know, and he just goes on to say that he called him a piece of shit to his face before, and he knows why, and he disrespected Popeye's chicken. But now, other than that, he's a piece of shit. Now, this is paraphrased, but it's almost close to word for word on the quote. But Derek Lewis, I don't know if he's being serious or not. And like, it's very hard to know with him because when he's serious and when he's joking, he speaks in exactly the same tone. So I don't know if he's being serious. But DC did respond and he said, I don't know why, because I haven't seen him for a while. But I was pretty hard on him about retiring because he had lost a couple of fights and was kind of telling the truth, and he seemed mad at me. But I haven't seen him. I'm going to see him this weekend. I'm going to ask him, are you mad at me? So that could be pretty interesting. But basically just goes on to say that he's pissed and, because he's an analyst, sometimes the fighters will be annoyed at him. And that's probably what he thinks it is. Now, for me, this is going to be interesting this weekend. I don't think things will kick off. They'll probably talk to each other man to man and sort it out. But yeah, it's just interesting that after so much time that Derek Lewis is bringing this up now. But yeah, DC responding. DC's not going to back down. Obviously, he is a pundit, but obviously was a fighter before. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Derek Lewis and DC meet this weekend. Okay, so the last little bit of news I just want to get to, because it is, like I say, a week away from the US elections, and it has to do with the boss of the UFC, Dana White. If you guys go over to Chris Cuomo's X and you scroll down to the fourth post, you can see Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, Mark Cuban, and Dana White all give us their takes at the top of the show. And we're just getting started. Let's get after it on News Nation. So you guys can go check this out. It's got 112,000 views on his X. You can fast forward if you want. I mean, it's only 4 minutes and 50 seconds where before Dana White joins, but essentially you've got Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and Mark Cuban and Chris Cuomo all kind of having a go at each other, speaking over each other, telling each other that what they're saying is not right, and they're kind of arguing about the economy, and they're arguing about inflation and what's the reason for inflation, and why is inflation so much higher under Joe Biden versus Donald Trump's years, and who's right and who's wrong. And it's just kind of like a big messed up mixture of the usual stuff you see with politics and political commentators in the US and really around the world. And then Dana White arrives, and you just straight away see everybody's demeanor change. All of a sudden, everybody looks like the school principal arrived. Like they're just sitting there, tight-lipped, they don't want to say anything. They jump straight to Dana White. No one interrupts him. Nobody tries to speak over him. Nobody really tells him he's wrong. It's actually very, very interesting to see. I think they know with Dana White that he doesn't care. He's not owned really by anybody. It's not the usual political commentator that has an agenda. I mean, I'm sure he has obviously he supports Donald Trump, but he cooks them. I mean, he goes on to talk about how America was safer under Donald Trump. He goes on to talk about how the border was secure. He goes on to talk about how the economy was thriving. He goes on to talk about how America was respected. He even goes into detail on wars and current events and things. And it's just go watch the interview. I mean, I'm summarizing everything here, but it was super interesting to see how really scared everybody looked when Dana arrived. It was shocking, like he was some sort of a principal or something like that. So go watch the full interview. He absolutely cooks them. Nobody tries to even, Chris Cuomo for a split second tried to correct him on one of his points. I can't remember exactly what it was, but Dana just came out of that looking like an absolute boss, spitting facts. He is the boss of the UFC, but now this is outside the UFC, spitting facts, straight away demanded respect, got respect, didn't even demand respect, and actually had what looked like a largely liberal audience clapping for him. So quite interesting to see that. So that's your wrap up, guys, of the news today. Let me know what you guys think of UFC 310. Who do you think should replace Belal Muhammad and Shavkat in the main event? What are you guys thinking for UFC 309? John Jones, Peyton Talbot, DC, and Derek Lewis. And what do you guys think? Are you even interested in the US election? What do you guys think of Dana's performance? Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. And I will see you guys for the next bit of news.